Back in 2021, September 29th, I posted this video, the top 10 ways to make money with crypto and NFTs. And in the last 4 years since posting this video, I've still non-stop studied how to make money with crypto and NFTs. And I've personally made, in the last cycle, I'll actually show you this now, in this last massive cycle, my third cycle, I've made millions of dollars trading crypto and NFTs by using these 5 critical lessons that I really want to share with you in this video. Because in 2021, when I made that video, I did not know these 5 lessons, and I probably turned about 10 grand into 200 grand and then ran it all back. It probably went from 10 grand down here all the way up to 200 at its peak, and then probably back to 15 to 20 grand maximum at the end of the entire cycle. And the cycle before that, because I started in crypto in 2017, I just got instantly eviscerated. I just put 2 grand or 5 grand into the market, which was a lot of money for me at the time, basically at that pico top, and got absolutely smashed. So I want to make sure, if this is your first or second or even third cycle, that you can leave this crypto bull market with as much money as possible. Starting with the very first lesson, which is that Bitcoin is the energy of this entire market. So when you come and have a look at the top assets by market cap, which is literally the top assets in the world, whether it's a commodity or a company, you can see that Bitcoin is currently ranking number 8 at 2.3 trillion US dollars housed in Bitcoin. But you can see it's not even 10% of the market cap of an old, outdated, 5,000-year-old, slower, less transparent, and archaic commodity of gold with a $24 trillion market cap. Because this is really important to know. We are all riding off the trend of Bitcoin, which is going to go from a $2.3 trillion market cap to surpass gold to a $24 trillion market cap, to continue to go up to maybe a $100 trillion market cap. This is the wave that we are all riding over the long term, and this is what gives the entire industry liquidity, money, and life. And this is because, for a couple of reasons. One of the biggest reasons is the fall of the dollar, how much of a scam the US dollar is, worth about 1 to 3% of what it was worth 100 years ago. And the US dollar, which is one of the strongest currencies in the world, loses about 12% of its purchasing power every single year. You can see this is the M2 money supply, which is how much money is being printed. You can see it consistently just goes up over time, devaluing itself and putting all of its value into an asset like gold or into an asset like Bitcoin. And you can see that this is true because when you have a look at the M2 money supply plotted against the price of Bitcoin, you can see there's almost a 90% correlation, which means the more money's printed, the more money's going to flow down into harder and harder assets, such as Bitcoin, such as gold, and those assets are going to go up in value, which is why we could potentially see Bitcoin, which is currently at a $2 trillion total market cap, surpass gold, surpass art, and suck a lot of liquidity out of things like real estate and bonds to become a $100 trillion asset, which is currently the world's global asset value is 900 trillion. So you think how small Bitcoin is compared to the total amount of assets, and the total market cap of all crypto expanding out from Bitcoin to all crypto at the moment is just surpassing $4 trillion. And so, I mean, to sum up the first lesson here, if you have a really low risk tolerance, crypto, although is a really magical asset class that allows you for once to out-earn monetary inflation, most people are just going to be wanting to hold Bitcoin because Michael Saylor predicts it's going to have a 30% return every single year. At the moment, I think it's averaging something like a 55% return every single year when you average out every single 4 years. It's the best performing asset class in history. And if you have a low risk tolerance, literally just come and hold Bitcoin. However, a lot of us want to play down the risk curves because this is where we can find the 10, 50, 100, potentially even 1,000 X's on our money, which is necessary because a lot of people have a lot less money to start. Back in 2017, when I had $2,000, I didn't really want to invest in stocks and get 10% back and have $2,200. That's not going to be life-changing money. I wouldn't even want to invest in Bitcoin if I was doing 30 to 50% a year because then 2,000 becomes 3,000. Again, it's not going to be life-changing. But what allures people is moving down that risk curve into Solana, into memes, into pump fund tokens, into really degenerate low cap utility tokens that can give us those 50 to 100x returns. So the next 4 lessons are based down the risk curve where we can potentially 10 to 100x our portfolio. In lesson 2, there's one thing you need in order to 100x your portfolio. And if you don't have this going for you, it's almost impossible to get a 10x, 50x, let alone a 100x. I'm going to start with this quote by Warren Buffett, who, funny enough, is strongly anti-crypto, but his quote is applicable here. He says, "Should you find yourself in a chronically leaking boat, energy devoted to changing vessels is likely to be more productive than energy devoted to patching the leaks." And in crypto, this is strongly relevant when you look at the market cycle. If we are in a leaking boat, if we are in a bear market and all assets are going down, it's extremely hard, almost impossible, to find a 50 or 100x return. If we're in the sideways phase, it is way more possible, but still really hard. However, when markets get euphoric and things go absolutely nuclear, it's almost hard to not see a 100x or 50x opportunity. And right now, if you're watching this video close to the time I posted it, we are literally in the most asymmetric risk reward time of the market possible. It's called the banana zone, when things literally go so parabolic that it's almost inverting back on itself, looking like a banana, which is where we find those 100x returns. And in order to find these 100x returns, which I'm going to tell you about in the third lesson, you need to know where we are in the market cycle, and you need to know on a smaller time frame where the fear and greed index is. When people are fearful, well, yes, you probably should be buying the tokens, because that is historically, you can see the price of Bitcoin here literally tracks the fear and greed index. When people feel greedy, the price of Bitcoin is going to go up. When people feel fearful, they're going to sell it and the price of Bitcoin is going to go down, which means, yes, technically you want to buy when people are fearful, but you won't realize those gains until people get greedy, because that is when the market goes up and then people will continue to ascend down the risk curve. This is what I've got right here. This is a crypto whip. We talk about this all the time on the channel. The bigger market cap tokens like Bitcoin, Ethereum, Chainlink, XRP, they're all at this handle of the whip, where you can see in the right market a 2, 4, maybe 5x return on your money. However, if you're looking for the 8x, 20x, and 100x's, once you have liquidity flowing, like the M2 money supply going up, and the liquidity flowing down into those riskier and riskier tokens like the large caps or the alt seasons or the NFT flex season, that is when you want to rotate your money from the less reward tokens like Bitcoin down into the lower cap market cap. For example, like Gala in the last cycle, this was a massive narrative going from a $2 million market cap all the way up to a $5 billion market cap. But have a look at this. This is another bonus side lesson for you. Look how quick that was, guys. It was sitting at a $500 million market cap, teleported to a 10x to a $5 billion market cap, and then basically eviscerated, evaporated, just like I got done in 2017, deleted all of its gains over the period of just a couple of months, guys. The bull market and the banana zone will be quick and it will be swift, and you want to be positioned as it's happening, and you want to get out while you still can. And how do you want to get out? You want to get out by going back up the risk curve to Bitcoin, maybe to stable coins, maybe even, if you want to get pretty crazy, back into stocks. Which takes us to lesson number 3. And this is probably what has most people confused and most people lose money in the long term. This is how there are so many different types of crypto trading. Like I had that video at the start, 10 different ways to make money in crypto. And what happens is everyone's trying to make money in different ways, and new strategies are popping up literally every single week or every single month. And what you're hearing is advice from everyone across the whole spectrum of how to make money in crypto. And those pieces of advice actually conflict unless you know specifically what type of trader, what type of holder they are. So I'm going to give you some examples of a lot of different ways to make money inside of crypto and what the appropriate sort of advice and how to play it is in each one. And I'm also going to include my favorite way to make money in crypto. Now, let's start once again with a Bitcoin chart. You can see the long-term hold of Bitcoin is one of the easiest things you can possibly do. 30 to 55% every single year on your money. Of course, it's going to be volatile. Volatility and risk are not correlated. Go study Michael Saylor if you want more on that. But you can see from 15,000 all the way up to the 115,000 that we're currently sitting at. Buy and hold and literally just multiply your money. This is just called holding spot. This is just called, you're not even a trader. You're literally just buying, holding the world's best performing asset. Now, I'm a big believer in the SPX 6900, which again, the same sort of strategy, buy and hold, but with a different asset. And now as you move down the risk curve into something like meme coins, that's going to be a lot riskier to actually buy and hold. So when people say, oh, don't buy and hold, this is all vaporware, these are all just Ponzi schemes, well, they could be right. Be careful what you're buying and holding. If you're buying and holding long-term high-performing assets like Bitcoin, or medium to long-term high-performing assets like SPX 6900, you'll probably do pretty well. On the other end of the spectrum, you're going to have people literally trading the trenches. And this is tokens that have been like 3 days old, 1 day old, literally 9 hours old, and 2 hours old down here, live with Ash. And you can see that they can do really well. $2.7 million of volume, literally millions of dollars in market cap, and people doing extremely well. This is Streamer Coin at $25 million market cap. I don't know Streamer Coin, I'm not talking specifically, but in the trenches, you don't want to buy and hold. You want to day trade, you want to do some technical analysis, you want to run some social arb analysis, which I'll tell you about in just a second, and you want to be ahead of the curve. So you can buy down here and get out up here and make your money and then go and do whatever you want with your life. Another way to trade is utility holds or fundamental analysis. This is hyper liquid. This is at an $18 billion market cap, a $54 billion fully diluted market cap. And you can see it's been performing extremely well from its launch at $6.40 up to $54. And it's the number 11 token. And this is literally selling shovels to gold diggers. This is a software that helps people trade crypto. But if we take a peek behind the curtains, we can see not only do they have $730 million staked on their protocol, they're also making over $1 billion of revenue in fees every single year. And so people are basically just timesing that out and they're valuing it like a company. And this is fundamental analysis. How do you find cryptos that are making way more money than they're actually valued at and buy into them? Not my favorite way to trade, but a very valid way to do it. Another way to do it is literally using crypto bots, which is setting up bots to trade the volatility of tokens within certain ranges. So you can see this bot is set to buy anytime they're in the green, set to sell anytime they're in the red. And literally you can have some sideways markets and these bots will be buying and selling, making you thousands or even potentially tens of thousands of dollars, literally just trading the volatility of certain cryptos. And then you have something called narrative trading or even derivative narrative trading. So this is MYX Finance, which apparently is the Chinese version of Hyperliquid, which is the token we just saw. This is currently valued at $11 billion, and you can see it went absolutely nuclear literally overnight from $1.30 up to $16 to bring it to an $11 billion market cap. And basically, this is the first look at the best way that I like to trade, which is figuring out narratives before everybody else. And this will take me to my fifth point. I'm going to jump across there now, but you need to have an inside edge in order to make the biggest bucks in crypto. If you ever wonder why the biggest influencers and the people who are most well connected in crypto make the most money, it's because they receive the alpha first. And if you understand that this is going to blow up, that MYX Finance is going to be the next big Hyperliquid, the Chinese version, and you hear that here, you can 15x your money. But if you don't hear it until you're up here at $13, I mean, you can actually lose money hearing the exact same narrative. I'll touch a little bit more on that in a second, because lastly, this is one of the most popular ways that people like to trade, which is technical analysis, which is literally figuring out trend lines, figuring out resistance, figuring out where markets are going to bounce and where they're going to go, looking at their candles, looking at their buy orders, and literally just trying to make money over the period of a day, maybe over the period of a week, maybe even a longer term 3-month sort of trade, but it's looking at the technical side of crypto. Now, lesson number 4, before we bring it home with lesson number 5 and how to get an insane advantage to make sure that you are well ahead of hearing the narrative of new tokens and new launches before everybody else. So this is really, really important to know because it's going to limit your downside, which is realizing that when people say that crypto is just vaporware, crypto is just Ponzi's, they're mainly right. But I mean, you can say that about almost any industry. 90% of businesses are going to fail, I think, within the first 12 months. I think it's like 95% of businesses are going to fail within the first 10 years. They're not Ponzi's. They're not worthless to launch, but people are trying new things, trying new strategies. And yes, there's going to be scams both in the business world and in crypto world, but you have to realize that every business, every narrative, and every crypto is going to have its own life cycle. And I want to show you this by coming back to CoinMarketCap, where you can literally see the top 100 tokens. And CoinMarketCap's a pretty magical software because it's been around since I think 2013. And right now, these are the top 10 cryptos. These are the top 20 cryptos, And when you look at this, especially if you're new, you're like, okay, this is the way it's going to be forever. But no, this is a very dynamic industry. If we go back using our time machine to 2021, you can see it's already starting to look quite different. You have tokens like Theta, tokens like Litecoin in the top 10. You have tokens like Bitcoin Cash, well, Stellar, Terra Luna, which ended up being a massive Ponzi. So people are right sometimes. VeChain, these are, and even Filecoin all the way up here. These are tokens that literally just a few years later either don't exist or well out of that top 10. And if we take the time machine back to 2019 again, you're going to see even more of that. Come over, look at the market cap of Bitcoin. It's just a fun little side quest for 67 billion US dollars at a 3,800 per token. But then you've got things like EOS, then you've got Litecoin again, Bitcoin Cash all the way up here, Stellar back up here, Tron's still up there these days. IOTA's an interesting one called Dash, one called Neo, one called Ethereum Classic, NEM, Zcash. These are tokens, once again, that are no longer in, or most of those are no longer anywhere near that top 100. We take the time machine back another 2 years. We can see Dash, we can see MadeSafe Coin, we can see Augur, we can see Economy, even Steemit. I remember Steemit back then. That was one of those ones that really did make my money disappear. Golem, all these tokens were in that top 100. In fact, they were in the top 20. Bitcoin at $1,000 back in 2017. And then if you come back even further to 2015, you can see BitShares, you got MadeSafe Coin again, NXT, Paycoin, Rimbit, new shares. You can see this is such a dynamic environment, and this is back in 2013 now, and you can see PPCoin is literally the 4th biggest coin in the world, Feathercoin, Devcoin, Freycoin, Novacoin, basically a China coin, which is really cool for me to come and look at, because you look at today's tokens and you're like, this is how it's going to be forever. No, realize that these are going to be dynamic. These are going to be changing. Bitcoin to me is really, like I said in lesson 1, the energy and the life force behind all the other tokens, and the rest of them plays on technology like Ethereum loading smart contracts into tokens, and plays on narratives like, oh my God, XRP is going to replace the banking system. And if you're early enough to those narratives, you're going to do well. But know that everything, guys, no matter how high up you are in the crypto whip, is going to have its own life cycle, and you want to get in before it goes backwards. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about that in a second. But first, I'm going to go into more detail in lesson 5. But to finish lesson 4, I also wanted to say, any of these coins, guys, especially the ones that you've seen head into the top 10, there's so much money to be made in them if you are early in the narrative. Just because something only may be around for 3 years and not 300 years doesn't mean you can't make $1 million or $10 million off it. Have a look at OXO. Now, I made 6 figures off of OXO by buying in at about 6 cents and selling up here at 48 cents on basically the top. I think actually this doesn't even go that high, but when we look at the wicks of the candles, this basically went up to 50 cents and I sold right at 48 cents. I was early to the narrative, and despite it tumbling all the way back down to 1 cent now, if you time the market properly, if you know where to get the info that other people don't have, you also can make a lot of money, even if it's short term. What do you care if something's going to be around 10 years from now? You just want to make sure you can get in early and get out before everybody else does. Which comes to the 5th lesson, and by far the most powerful, by far the most important lesson that I wish I could instill back in 2021 into my brain, because this is basically what we've created this whole channel and my whole inner circle around now, is having a unique, unfair advantage in the market. Because 95% of crypto is narrative driven. For example, Shiba, the narrative around that was, this is the next Dogecoin. Now, if you got into Shiba down here with the influencers, you would have done extremely well. You would have got 100x, maybe even 1000x your money. If you're a little bit later, you might 20x your money. If you're even later to that news cycle, you may be 5xing your money. But most people, literally by definition, are going to be getting in at the pico top when the narrative is the most widespread and most mainstream here about it. And then you're just going to find that tumble down that backside like I did in 2017. Now, this shape graph is basically a symbol for everything, literally everything. I'm not just talking crypto now. I'm talking, this is the East India Trading Company, which was the biggest company in the world for hundreds of years. Eventually, guys, it went to zero. This company actually introduced the technology of buying stocks in the stock market, but a lot of people made, I don't know what the inflation's like, but in today's day and age, millions of dollars off the East India Trading Company, even though it eventually went to zero. Have a look at Google. We're only going up for now, but with the advent of AI, you can probably predict that in 100 years, 1,000 years, this is also going to have a downward on the other side. Or if you have a look at something like Polkadot, which narrative was, This is the best layer one, sort of like Solana sort of won the layer one wars. This was one of the contenders that went from a couple $1 million market cap all the way up to a $50 billion market cap, and now all the way back down the other side to a $7 billion market cap. They all have this life cycle, but depending on where you hear the narrative that Polkadot is going to be the next big layer one, it's way quicker than Ethereum, it has way more features than Ethereum. If you heard it down here, you'd be really rich. If you're hearing it up here, you'd be really poor. And if this is the first time you ever heard of it, don't worry about it. Polkadot narrative is basically over. Let's have a look at some of the narratives that aren't. Before we do that, Doge Dash is one of my favorite narratives to talk about because it's just so absurd. It was the Super Mario of crypto gaming. This was 3 years ago, back when I started posting those videos, 2021. Basically, guys, this was a flash game that had no crypto integration. You had to literally video yourself playing the game. There's only 10 levels of this flash game. Video yourself playing the game, send it into them to make sure you weren't cheating, and they'd send you a little bit of crypto, a few dollars, a few cents, whatever it was. And that was a crypto game, the Super Mario of crypto gaming. Guys, this ran up so hard, I think to a $500 million market cap. And again, this is all the lessons coming together. The market was right, the narrative was right, the marketing and the KOLs behind them were right. And people had a lot of money to be made, and they had that unique inside advantage that crypto gaming was going to be absolutely nuclear. Of course, since it's come down the other side and is no longer even a project. But if you're early enough to narratives and you have a unique advantage, you're going to do extremely well. I want to show you about 7 or 8 different unique advantages that I've personally had or have seen out there in the market, so you can get some ideas on how you can get an edge. Starting with a little bit more zoomed out. Again, what we've been talking about, a lot more macro. There's $10 trillion that is projected to come into the crypto markets for a lot of reasons. So basically the M2, there's a lot of money printing going on, and something like Bitcoin is one of the hardest assets. People need to move down the risk curve because otherwise they're not even going to be able to get ahead in life. And that is why all this money is going to flood into crypto. If you can front run that liquidity and know where to have your portfolio, so when that comes in, you're going to do extremely well. That is a unique advantage, knowing that $10 trillion is going to enter the market, knowing that the money printers are eventually going to end up in crypto, and being positioned in the right ones. In fact, Murad predicts this is going to happen literally this month, where we have 3 pumps. He says literally every other bull run has had 3 pumps. We've had one in early 2024, one in late 2024, early 2025, and we're predicted to have this last one. If you know the market every time has 3 pumps and you know you've had R2, you can be positioned properly before it arrives. That is a unique piece of knowledge, a unique narrative that you understand that a lot of people don't, that can make you a lot of money. Dogecoin going from $1 billion to $100 billion. If you knew that Elon Musk was literally going to market this on your behalf, pumping it, he literally started promoting it right here, which is why it went absolutely nuclear, posting about it all over Twitter. Check the timestamps. He is the person who blew it up from that $1 to $5 billion level all the way up to that $50 billion level and beyond. If you knew he was going to promote it before he did, you would be extremely wealthy. If you knew Peanut the Squirrel was going to be listed on a centralized exchange, like a lot of people out there did, and there's ways to find this information before everybody else, you could make a lot of money as it pumped to a $2.5 billion market cap. If you knew, like we did, and we put a video out on this channel, Aerodrome Finance, liquidity from Aerodrome Finance will be used to list tokens on the Coinbase DEX. You would have been able to long from 33 cents all the way up to $1.50. If you understand the SPX 6900 tokenomics and metrics are way better distributed to every other meme coin out there, you'll understand that they will be able to hold that $10 trillion market cap way stronger than a lot of other projects. Inside our inner circle, we have a massive community going out and literally seeing which influencers who can literally pump tokens tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars of market cap, which tokens they are partnering with before they promote it out to their audience, and therefore you can catch it pre-pump. Even something like the Yeezy coin. I was talking to my friend in the gym and he was on top of the Yeezy coin. He's like, the rumor is that they're going to absolutely pump it. And my friend's deep in crypto, deep into the crypto trenches. And he's like, there's definitely going to be a Yeezy coin. It's going to come out soon. I want to keep my eye on it. He literally called me as the Yeezy coin launched. And I think it was at about a $600 to $1 billion market cap, somewhere in here. I mean, they've restructured the market cap based on circulating, but basically somewhere in this range here. And I was like, do I think I'm early in that news cycle? Yes. My friend is literally watching, waiting for Yeezy to launch his token, called me as soon as it came across his news feed, and therefore I know that he's at least within the first 5% of people or 10% of people, maybe worst case 20% of people hearing about it. By the time I get my money in there, I believe there's at least 50% of people behind, which there was a nice 3x on your money if you know when to get out. There's a game of chicken at the end here on how high you want to get out, but there's so much liquidity that you can literally make hundreds of thousands of dollars in literally an afternoon just knowing you're earlier. Or inside our inner circle, again, we have our community rolling Twitter, seeing what hottest trends are, like the Ibiza final boss meme that we found at a $600,000 market cap that went on to do a 73.5x return just because we knew we were early to that trend. Or inside our inner circle, we also track, and this is basically, guys, the software I've built since that 2021 phase where I'm like, how do we get those unique unfair advantages in crypto that powerful KOLs, massive influencers, and the best traders in the world have that we really don't have the time or the energy to go and get ourselves? And that's what we built our inner circle, and that's why we built our software. And of course, you can go and get this in your own way, but it's just so easy because we have literally reverse engineered all these KOL wallets. This is Alex Becker, who is a very prolific, very profitable trader who literally makes markets happen. We have over 40 of his wallets, and we can see exactly what parts of his portfolio are the biggest percentages, what tokens he's invested in the most, so we can literally copy trade people who not only make markets but get insane results in those markets. We can also see any new partnerships because we are tracking wallets like that and have that inside advantage before the $10 trillion comes in, before the fear and greed goes absolutely off the chart, and before Alex Becker really promotes it to hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people across his social media. So I highly recommend before you make a trade ever, you ask, where am I in the news cycle? Am I early? Am I in the first 1% of people who are going to know? And is this piece of information extremely powerful that can add tens or hundred millions of dollars to a market cap? If so, bet heavy. If you think you might be 50 to 70%, or you're like, oh, maybe this isn't even secret information anymore, maybe everybody knows. And again, it's going to be really dynamic and really blurry, because if the market is extremely hot, you can afford to be quite late. Where if the market is cold, you want to make sure you're in that first 10% of people to hear about. And so if you want help moving up that news cycle, come and join our inner circle, where we literally have thousands of people trolling Twitter, trolling socials, following wallets, tracking the blockchain for information before it goes public. We track the biggest KOLs in the world, so we see exactly when their wallets are buying new tokens, what tokens they hold the most of in their portfolio, and we're even tracking who they're following on Twitter, who they're replying to on Twitter, so we can see this information before everybody else, before the $10 trillion comes in, and position ourselves accordingly, and once again, make as much money as possible by being early in crypto. The link to our inner circle is in the description below. We'd love to see you in there. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video.